Hello, everyone. Very happy to be back here. And today's podcast is going to be a community podcast where we're talking to you guys not just about some of the various developments on Wall Street Bet side, but also we want to get your thoughts on what's happening in the landscape of Bitcoin around the world right now, and both understanding how you feel this might affect you, and what some of these new developments are coming out of El Salvador as the first country to adopt Bitcoin as its national currency, and what that means, and what that might mean for the world stage. But really, this is a chance for us to listen to some of your thoughts and ideas, some of your questions, any concerns you have, and really get a dialogue going internally within this community. And with Meow Meow is going to join me today. We want this to really be a back and forth dialogue to better understand how we can, improve the level of information we're sharing with you, make sure that we're focusing on subjects that are exciting and important to you, and make sure that your voices are being heard, and that we're acting as a really effective bridge between the leadership of the project itself and the community. With that said, I would love to open on the topics of the ETP, which Meow Meow was just discussing, and start with what questions does the community have about this? What's the level of enthusiasm around this, and what can we answer?
So I think we're gonna make it in a civil manner, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually got one question in my voice chat, in my DMs, right, from Eric Mann. I'm gonna read it out. My question.
Am I the only one not hearing anything?
I lost Meow Meow on this side.
Well, I read the question until we get him back. Let me just pull up the question as I sent it to him. All right, so some of the new version 2 balancer pools allow pools to increase their APRs by lending out unused capital through asset managers. Will the ETP take advantage of this feature of the version 2 pools?
Can you open with the beginning of that question again to make sure I heard it properly?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, so
I'm sorry. My internet was a little bit wonky. Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll take this question, okay?
Go for it.
So right now we're working together with the balancer at this point. We're on alpha test, right? And the thing is, we might take advantage. This is still feature we cannot disclose to people since it's not final, right? But the team is considering it right now. I can assure you, right? And we're working on making it more stable and more, how to say it properly, attractive for the investor. So totally, this is in consideration right now, but I cannot give you a final answer, right? Since we're still not released an ETP, nor even the first announcement about the release of ETP, which gonna put everything so it's like coming soon, all this stuff. All right. So stuff gonna be announced, but the team is considering all of that stuff. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So also, by the way, regarding ETPs, or if you want to know more about like Bitcoin or El Salvador, what do you think, Demil? What are we gonna?
Well, I think it's, I'm sure many have heard the news coming out of El Salvador. I think the important part is to understand what it means and what people are expecting from this. El Salvador is the smallest country in Latin America. It's not a country you hear about often in the news, and it's a country that, as of the early 2000s, has been operating off a fiat-based currency that's pegged to the US dollar. And I think, one of the most interesting things about any country, let alone the first country, and it almost doesn't matter which one it is, adopting Bitcoin as its national currency, is that it takes it out of a property status and into a foreign currency status. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see, for those of us, not just in America, but all over the world, how that impacts our local tax code. Because currently, Bitcoin and all cryptocurrency in the US is taxed as property, which means that you pay a capital gains tax. This makes a lot of people feel, incredibly uncertain about withdrawing it from the market. They tend to keep separate their fiat accounts and their crypto accounts. And, it's not uncommon to see people in America who are living, paycheck to paycheck off their day job while accruing millions of dollars in the crypto market, because of this concern about the tax implications of withdrawing it. And, I think there's a lot of talk and consideration about, when they reach a certain point, are they going to relocate to Portugal? Are they going to move their life somewhere that has less tax implication? And I think there are a lot of people who seriously consider that. But what could be even more interesting is the part where we as a country now have to treat Bitcoin itself, not necessarily all cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin as a foreign currency instead of property. So we don't have answers on that right now. And I think it's only, the beginning of understanding what that might mean. But I think a lot of people are looking at that as a distinct possibility, that it will completely upend the tax code in this country and in other countries around the world.
Well, I could actually add a little bit to that, right? I made a little research on El Salvador prior to saying Maine. Yes. And right now, Maine basically, the El Salvador economy is mainly consists of export, stuff, and tourism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to understand that El Salvador right now is actually, it is not a shitty country these days. I'm not even kidding. The GDP is actually constantly rising, and they not that big one, but they're not the last one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So accepting Bitcoin as a national currency for El Salvador is the way how they can start to attract more high-tech companies into Latin America region. So El Salvador actually thinking very future-proof at this point, attracting a lot of Chinese right now who are literally fleeing China because Bitcoin mining gonna help there. And see how it was perfectly timed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to say, China says, we're gonna ban mining. And today, literally, there were some news that in some industrial parks, the government officials shut down the mining farms there. And you can take a look at the global hash rate right now. It had a drop on that. So El Salvador actually acted perfectly fine. They said, all right, we're not just export economy. We're gonna be the first country in the world who gonna officially adopt the Bitcoin as a payment method, and with that way attracting everyone from the world come to our beautiful place. And it's actually really beautiful. I took a pictures. It's amazing, right? Seriously, it's looking amazing. Come to us, pay our taxes, right? Build your office, build your business there. You literally will have a business in a small region of the heaven, how they can promote it that way. Because, come on, it's a Central America. It's pretty nice there, right?
Yeah, it's a paradise if you can. But there are a lot of problems as well. It's not just a paradise. It's also, a region that has been plagued with a lot of, crime, drug trafficking, high murder rates, all of those things, which
But
often
that
come with.
way, the thing is, that way they're actually doing pretty good idea when you start to get influx of educated people with money, with will to be legalized, right? To have a good business, they will start to invest, they will start to pay more taxes there. Country can invest this money into educating their own citizens,
Mhm.
and therefore you will see the growth of the El Salvador. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to make any predictions here, but El Salvador actually aiming to be one of the top countries in the Central America and economically fighting with Mexico. And I'm
Mhm.
not and I'm not even kidding right now. They're gonna fight they're gonna have like peaceful one, right? But still it's gonna be a nice competition in the Central America, and we're gonna see a lot of good stuff in the El Salvador coming pretty soon.
And when you say fight with Mexico, do you mean compete with them in terms
Yeah,
of
economic.
import and export?
Yes. And the thing
Okay.
is, El Salvador could actually go full Singapore way, I'm thinking. Since the thing is, I could actually think that U.S. government could be behind, because since U.S. have a lot of influence in El Salvador, you can actually understand it by looking at the export chart. They exporting. Give me a second. I saw it. Yeah, they're exporting 66% to United States and importing 43% of stuff. Therefore, they have a lot of political power in El Salvador too.
And
Uh,
which is big for a country of 6 million people.
oh yeah,
Um,
totally. But they trying, I think, US is trying to use the El Salvador is like a Singapore in their area of influence.
right.
Is
Which
the
is
floor open for other thoughts on this news?
Sorry, Eric, can you repeat that?
Just asking if the floor was somewhat open for other thoughts on the news.
Yeah,
sure.
would love for you to join the conversation. Come on in.
Yeah, I have to say I'm pretty skeptical of the idea that the U.S. is behind it, because my main thought on El Salvador adapting it is the possibility for new competition in terms of reserve currency. I mean, that was, that's always been, I think, in crypto kind of the big dream, right? That Bitcoin, or I mean, the Dogecoin people talk about it for Dogecoin. I'm not as optimistic for them, but anyway, I think that's really the biggest opportunity and the biggest danger. I mean, I know of people here who, U.S., who are concerned that basically the U.S. government will see Bitcoin as a threat for the position of, the primary reserve currency, because that is where a lot of U.S. power comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the U.S. government is basically too incompetent and captured by corporate and wealthy interests who, while it may be in their best interest to make sure that Bitcoin doesn't displace the dollar as the primary reserve currency, are too focused on their own self-interest to actually motivate any sort of strong government action against it. So I'm pretty optimistic, as I think there are a lot of countries that would like a reserve currency that is not controlled by another country.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
right
and
now
they
it's
and
dollar and
that's a
they're
euro.
great
very
point.
they're
That's a
very
great point.
beholden. I mean, he's making a great point in that, because they have been reliant on the U.S. dollar for several decades. They're somewhat beholden to the U.S. and its economy and its reserves. And this, I think, is an act of independence.
I,
Um,
I agree. I agree, Eric. Like, I could be wrong. That's a good point. Really good point. Awesome. But let's agree that El Salvador right now have a potential to become a second Singapore in the Americas region.
I like that.
I like it too. And probably, hey guys, how to get visa in El Salvador? How to get a like national citizenship of El Salvador?
Well, by the way, this is the fascinating thing that they just announced. I listened to the president did a Twitter Spaces speech yesterday, or rather a conversation with a series of Bitcoin panelists, and you can listen to that online, and it's about 2 hours of hearing his thoughts on the subject, which was quite interesting. But basically, any foreign nationals who want to come to El Salvador and spend the equivalent of 3 Bitcoin can get immediate and permanent residency in El Salvador. So I think this isn't just, I mean, obviously a huge part of this is about changing the economics of the country and the health of its civilization. But this is also a play to attract, entrepreneurs or people that are in the crypto space, foreign nationals, to El Salvador as well. So that he's definitely making a pretty big play to bring in a new contingency.
And let's be honest. Who is the president? One sec. Who is the president of El Salvador? Nayib. Nayib looks great with this crypto laser eyes, I swear.
So Eric, I have another question for you. It sounds like you're based in the US.
Yeah, I am.
What are your thoughts about, as someone who's investing in crypto, your future plans? Do you have these thoughts of relocating to a more crypto friendly country at some point, or do you feel like you are committed to staying here?
I think there are some situations in which I could envision leaving, but I have I have ties.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like something I can just do. I'm
And-
not. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what's your vibe in terms of? I mean, obviously the regulations, the regulatory state of crypto in America is still it's very nascent, very in flux, and very unpredictable at this moment. What are your hopes or expectations for that?
Well, I mean, I'd like to be able to do what I want with my money. I mean, that's my main preference. The restrictions that Miami was talking about before, I think before the recording started, about the idea of a qualified investor in the United States, and that for certain investments, you have to be a qualified investor. And how do you be a qualified investor? You have a lot of money. That is literally the qualification.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think that is bullshit. And so I would like that to go away in the crypto space. I mean, but really, I mean, if it's taxed as a currency or as property, or if mining is taxed as income or not, I feel like that's going to be. I feel like people worry too much about the tax implications, and usually it's a lot more about the actual gain or loss. Like, I think if you have millions in crypto and you're living paycheck to paycheck because you're worried about taxes, then I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. Okay, like literally, just quit your job, cash in $1 million, pay 300,000 in taxes. Start an IRA. Like, do stuff with that money. Like, the idea of living paycheck to paycheck while you're worth millions is crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can add a little bit, right? Some people know that I'm very skeptical about, I'll be a little bit gentle in words, but I'm really skeptical about taxing cryptocurrencies. And the reason why, it's actually a good joke I heard recently, that RC thinks about the cryptocurrencies, magical internet money, for 364 days. On a tax day, they actually want to have you to pay taxes from cryptocurrency. And from that point, I actually starting to ask a question, right? And compare right now with El Salvador too. I'm okay if I'll be a citizen of El Salvador and I will have my crypto gains. I'll be okay to pay my taxes in Bitcoin to El Salvador government than to any government in the world. The reason why? Because in El Salvador, Bitcoin is completely legalized, it's official currency, and I'm fine with that. In other countries, if you don't treat Bitcoin seriously and think of it as a magical internet money, then your taxes should to be magical tax money that don't exist. That's like I'm
So
very
you're saying
skeptical.
you don't want the government to make fun of your crypto for 364 days a year and then ask for a tax on it on that 365th
The
day.
thing is, no, the thing is, what I'm trying to say, governments did nothing good for taxing me for my crypto. They didn't help. Okay, I'm okay if they, for example, take taxes from because they provide something for me to get this gain, right? But
No,
they
I
don't.
understand what you're saying. They've been somewhat against it, and yet they still want to
Yeah,
tax
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
unfair. That's unfair completely, right? And this may sound like a little bit anti-government or something like that, but let's be honest. They don't do anything to crypto to grow. They fear of crypto and they restrict it and they try to regulate it. And the fun thing is, today there were actually news regarding that they recently, I saw, just give me a second, they said like the DeFi looks like a scam, all that stuff. We need to heavily regulate it, right? The fun thing is, DeFi couldn't care less because
Well,
DeFi is
you
not
know,
regulated.
actually, to be fair, so there is a newly confirmed head of the Securities and Exchange Commission in the U.S., and I understand every country is different in this regard. But this person's name is Gary Gensler, and I actually took it was an online course at MIT that he was teaching a blockchain course at MIT for years. That was incredibly popular, and I have to say he was a shockingly good teacher. And you know, he I think has been actually quite slow to to do anything with regulation around it. He acknowledges it, but he understands it better than most people, and I think he understands why it was created. The fact that this was a rebellious stance against the 2008 financial crisis. He understands the intent. He understands that it works. He accepts that it's money. He accepts it as currency. And he knows that you can't control it, that you can't block it, and that it would be futile to try. And so I think, I have some solace in, not in the US government particularly, but in knowing that the person who's in charge of regulation understands that you can't ban it, and you have to figure out as a government how to work with it. So it's probably the best of all evils, having someone like that in that role who I think is somewhat benevolent in his stance around cryptocurrency. But I think the concern is obviously tax avoidance. But then you have the report that came out 2 days ago of the top 25 billionaires in America not paying taxes at all. So, I think it gets into.
The thing is, they still can pay. Like, if they want to regulate crypto that much, let them first fix the problem with their own top 25 billionaires who don't pay taxes at all. Seriously.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think they're, I think people tend to agree that their focus should be elsewhere right now. But I would love to go back to the conversation about El Salvador, and I say this because
Venice, I'm sorry a little bit, but we actually had a really good addition to our talk from Odyssey, and they DM'd me in the chat. They DM'd me this, right? So I want to read it out. It's actually pretty damn great, right? It's a quote. So I think that a lot of criticism behind cryptocurrency is stemming from altcoins. When we speak about crypto, you have to look at crypto as a whole and as a true, and only the true coins are the crypto with real-world utility. A majority of crypto space is focused on altcoin craze right now, and with all these coins coming out that aren't legit, make it worse. But once the regulations are better and these altcoins are destroyed, there will be more seriousness behind the idea. We already have a majority major investors and giant corporations and governments investing in crypto. The question of it will be the thing or no longer relevant. The tax scenario, though, is a complicated structure. We need to be realistic here. Tax will always be a thing. Complete freedom of tax is not beneficial to any government. So as far as taxes, I think people need to get the idea of no tax ever out of their heads. That's just not realistic. Again, the tax laws are strict right now because we're in the infancy stages of the entire global currency system being made. And they're trying to regulate first, then they will lower taxes. And that's actually a really good point. That's why I asked a little bit to stop and read it out. That's really great point, right? And as I told before, I'm okay with taxes if government will create me a space to spend my earned crypto. And yes, considering that we have a lot of shitcoins right now, let's be honest, let's call it shitcoins, not altcoins, right? Like SafeMoon or Shiba, whatever the crap they're gonna create today. I literally, in the Satoshi Street Bets, I actually have a fun game of what fuck coin we're gonna have today, because there was so much like copycats of the fuck Elon coin. And that's why I was making a joke about that all the time. So I think yes, but considering that all altcoins should to be gone away, I would disagree, because you will miss a lot of great projects. And I'm not saying just like WSBDapp right now. I'm not going to plug it in right now, right? But we should consider that Ethereum some day ago was an altcoin which wasn't even received smoothly. And I'm one of that guys who actually changed my mind about Ethereum just recently. So that's a good point. Really great. Thank you, Odyssey. Really, thank you.
Well, I appreciate also, what he's saying, frankly, is that, taxes are what operate a society. So without them, we would all be in very much trouble. I think it does become more about fairness, in that regard. And I think that's always the consideration. I think in the U.S. we have a problem of most major tech companies don't pay corporate tax, and most billionaires don't pay any tax at all. And that's an aspect of our tax system that is broken, and that I think makes people who do pay tax feel very sort of contemptuous about it, and it's been somewhat stigmatized as a thing that you're supposed to try to avoid. Taxes aren't a bad thing, and they're and they are ultimately good for society, but it's helpful if everyone's paying them, obviously, and not just the people who are actually working for a living. But I don't disagree with that. I don't think there's any government that's going to be happy to run a government without tax income. I think it's just about how do you make that fair.
Even PancakeSwap charges taxes,
Yeah, I mean, fees are a part of what makes the world go round. So I'm not anti-tax. Actually, I actually feel quite happy about paying my taxes.
I'm also not anti-tax. I'm anti-useless tax. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm okay if taxation is somewhat reasonable.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's El Salvador.
Yeah.
Right?
But let's take the conversation back to El Salvador, because I'd love to get some more of the community participating in that dialogue.
Do we have anyone in the chat who wants to talk about El Salvador with us and their opinion on that? Anyone raise their hands if you're muted, or just unmute yourself if you are not muted. Some people are not. No? Maybe that's his chat. Oh, I see actually. Odyssey wants to talk again. I'm gonna unmute them. Odyssey, you're unmuted.
So, I mean, I don't have a lot to say on the topic, but I think it's good. I think more smaller countries that aren't in the U.S.'s grips should also do that. And then I think the whole world will be a little more accepting of all this shit.
Yeah.
Well, let's agree. El Salvador experiment gonna be interesting for everyone.
Definitely.
Because
I think what's interesting too is because it might feel like this came out of left field as it was just announced yesterday. And it's been a hugely popular decision, I think, of all the sort of major thought leaders in Bitcoin and crypto in general are really celebrating this. But what it is actually a prototype of a prototype. there was a group that went down to El Salvador years ago and founded something called Bitcoin Beach, which was meant to be a template of how a society could, fund itself through blockchain and through Bitcoin, and how it could become a functional, independent, operative society. And that caught the attention of the president and began to influence his thinking. And there was a lot of lobbying, there was a lot of campaigning, to capture his imagination around this. And I think, having heard him speak, he seems to have had quite the education and understanding what Bitcoin's really about and what's possible with it. Because El Salvador is such a small country, it does therefore become somewhat of a prototype of if they can make this work on what's a, arguably much smaller scale than the rest of the world, these other countries that are coming into the fold, specifically in Latin America, specifically where they have had histories of government corruption and hyperinflation and just economic instability for years. That's Argentina, Paraguay, Panama, Mexico. If El Salvador can make this work, it actually becomes a blueprint for how other countries can adopt the same systems. And I think they won't do it on their own without very forward-thinking blockchain companies such as Stripe to come in and build those infrastructures. But I do think that it's something we could see happening in sort of ad infinitum throughout countries that need some sort of radical change in order to achieve stability.
Venus, I want to add a little bit. I send you in the DMs right now one picture. That picture is from Google Trends.
Okay.
And I actually go to Google Trends and posted like
this is also in Russian. I can't read it.
No. Don't look at Russian language. Interface is still the same, right? El Salvador citizenship is trending after the president of El Salvador made the announcement.
Yep, I'm sure it is.
So with El Salvador,
go for it, Odyssey.
Yeah.
Are we just? What exactly are like? What are we? Are we just? Like, are you saying like? How do we feel? Like, what do we think the outcome of El Salvador adopting that as a legal currency is going to be, or how do we feel about them? Like, that's
more the question. More the question is, what do you make of the news? How do you interpret it?
How do you feel it? Right. I'm really bullish on that.
I am too. I think it's good. I think
it's good. And
other places.
Meow. Let the man speak.
Yeah. I want to finish my idea, right? But okay.
I think that exactly what you said, Venus. They're gonna do it, and then Panama, Mexico, all these other, maybe even Puerto Rico, all these other places will look at that and then be like, "Yo, we should do that." And I think that's what we need right now. I think I'm cool. I think it's cool. I think whoever their president is, like, he's trying to make change. He's one of the forefronts of it now. Good for fucking him. Good for him.
Yep. And I think what's kind of cool to me as well is, we've heard a lot about, companies or countries creating their own cryptocurrencies as their national currency. And there's been rumors of this happening in, China, even the US, and recently Cuba, that they're going to invent their own coin and as a digital currency system. And I think what this might prove is that you actually don't have to. If you can make, especially if you're, again, in the developing world, if you can simply adopt Bitcoin without having to build this entirely complex system of your own, then you're tapping into something that has a universal value. And, you kind of get away from the same thing that Europe was trying to get away from when they created the euro, which is neighboring countries having these dramatic fluctuations in the value of their national currency.
So this is just a thought, but all right, like, think about the barter system, right?
Yep.
Like, that's kind of the state we're in with cryptocurrency right now. It's like you just said, like, once people adopt it, they're gonna go back to the idea, like, forget making our own currency, and then they're gonna adopt something like Bitcoin or something that, like, 10 years from now, at that point, they're gonna revert right back to one world currency. Just like the barter system used to be random stuff people traded, and then we all agreed as people, this system works, but let's make anything to trade with. And that's what I mean. That's what I think altcoins right now, we're in infancy stages. People are making stuff, and there are altcoins with good, like eventually, like Dogecoin was a joke, and then people put real world utility behind it. There's other coins that happens to. So not every alt, but back to, like I said, I think that we're in the beginning stages of the crypto thing as a whole. So
Yeah.
once we get there, the regulations are set in stone, the lower taxes, because right now the taxes are high because they don't know how to regulate it, and they want to get criminals out of the mix. Like, they don't want people washing their money tax free through crypto. So we're just it's in a weird space. There's a lot of topics people are trying to tackle, but I think as a whole that this shit is good when people do that.
Yep, and I think the market likes it. I think there was obviously a sort of resilient bump that came after this news, which happened yesterday, and the bump sort of came overnight. But you'll also bring up another interesting point, which is, and I'm sure we've all been exposed to this theory, that for many, many years before we got to where we are now with Bitcoin, there was this narrative being pushed out by the central banking system, which infected a lot of governments, which was that cryptocurrency was a thing people used to trade on the dark web, and it was almost inherently connected to drugs, guns, human trafficking, and that no person with good intentions would have any reason to use Bitcoin. And I think that was a lot of people's first impression of what it was. And in the last several months, I mean, this is how recent I think the turnaround has been. A lot of government figures from all over the world have stepped forth and said, you know what, we've looked at some studies, we've looked at the data, and it turns out that the criminal use of cryptocurrency is quite minimal and no different than what they've been doing for years through central banking systems. And there is still much, much larger cases of criminal activity happening in the central banking system than there is in cryptocurrency. And that belief or that narrative is somewhat unfounded and somewhat irrelevant.
But the anti-marijuana thing, back when it was they had anti-marijuana law, which was ads. It'll make you rape people. And then years later, no longer in their benefit to have that. So now they came out with the truth. That's what Bitcoin was, a scare. They were like, oh shit, we don't want that.
I think the part about it benefiting them now as the reason they're changing their mind, I think rings very true. I think the most bullish thing, or rather I do agree that El Salvador adapting Bitcoin is extremely bullish, and I think the only possible concern would be, the regulatory threat. But I think, like we were saying, now that they're benefiting from it, now that traditional finance people are making money off Bitcoin, they own the regulators. So I think that's very bullish for anyone in the crypto space.
Also,
he gets what
I'm sorry. Eli actually raised the hand, and he's waiting for his turn for a long time. So I want to give him a little time to talk. Eli, you with us?
Oh yeah, cheers. No, I agree. It's 100% bullish. I think it's 100% great news. My only concern is they want to be using this as a medium of payment, right? And
no, they actually, if it's official currency, that's a mean of payment.
So it's basically it's a mandated form of payment now, which means that if you are a vendor in El Salvador, your business is mandated to accept Bitcoin. You can't not. If you're a McDonald's in El Salvador, you can't not accept Bitcoin. And it's the government's job to provide the technology infrastructure to make sure that anyone from a fruit vendor to a corporate restaurant chain has the digital infrastructure to process payments in Bitcoin.
So
the thing is,
hold on, let's Eli speak, please, for just a moment.
Oh, come on.
I understand that. That wasn't my point. My point is, the reason why Bitcoin hasn't fully been adopted is because of the extortionate amount of fees that go in per transaction. And I can only assume in countries that suffer from hyperinflation, and Venezuela, and if you're paying $20 for a transaction, it's just not usable.
They call cryptocurrency ATMs, which is actually like in the business world of ATMs, they're starting to talk about it a lot. As more of this shit happens, bro, they're gonna be ATM, just like you got cash ATMs. There's gonna be ATMs, and that you can only regulate like the fees. You can only do that, but so much. Once it's for a whole country, it's they're gonna have to change that as far as.
Well, there's another part in there too, which is El Salvador has the highest number of remittances in Central America, meaning the highest amount of money being sent home from abroad. There's been a huge migration out of El Salvador for years, much of that to the United States, where people find work and jobs and send money back home to their families. Same is true of Mexico and other Central American countries, but El Salvador had the greatest remittance. Most of those remittances, by the time they reach the hands of the person that they're intended to, have had 40% taken out in fees by the banking system. So, if I think it was $2 billion a year being sent back through remittances, imagine 40% of that's gone before it leaves America. So I think comparatively speaking, yes, it's expensive, to buy and sell Bitcoin on certain apps, but comparative to 40% to send, fiat money home, I think it doesn't quite compare.
So I'm actually right now open the asamblea.gov.sv, which is basically a website where everything they said, and they actually made it pretty simple, just 10 points how the Bitcoin gonna be implemented in Salvador. And one of them says, like, without prejudice to action of the private sector, the state will promote alternative that allow user to carry out Bitcoin transactions, as well have automatic and instant convertibility from Bitcoin to dollar, to US dollar, because they using US dollar as like a packed one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is not mandatory. They are saying alternative, which actually gonna be used not in McDonald's, like you said, I think, right? But where these fees are actually not that important. Cars, homes, just basically expensive utility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or something like in P2P transactions, which are great. And also they're gonna create, I think they're gonna create their own basically system to transfer the Bitcoin, right? Like their own exchange, right? Which is fine again, and they can collect taxes, that they collect fees, right?
So what the government's actually doing is they're creating a Bitcoin treasury, and they're allowing business owners, vendors who've collected Bitcoin, who say, you know what, I own a flower business. I don't want to keep Bitcoin on my ledger and have to deal with the volatility of this thing. I want security, or I want stability. The country itself, the government's treasury, will buy back the Bitcoin in exchange for fiat, and they will take the risk on the margin, which means that, that flower vendor, let's say, sells $10 worth of flowers. They hand the government treasury that $10 worth of Bitcoin. The government treasury hands them $10 in fiat because that's what the vendor requested. And they take the risk on whether that Bitcoin goes up or down.
Venus,
yes.
Venus, I'm sorry to stop you right here, but actually, if you take a look at time, we're talking for like 45 minutes about El Salvador, but we also have some news too.
Yes.
I'm
yes,
really sorry.
and we have time, but I think we also have Zulkif Akin, who is raising his hand. Would you like to have him speak?
Yes, sure. Zulkif, you're free to talk here. Akin? No, I think he cannot hear us. Anyway, yeah, I think we have to move a little bit on the topics. We can talk about the El Salvador of the podcast gonna end, and I'm actually gonna support this talk. But I think we also have some news, right? Regarding
what would you go ahead?
So, all right. So I'm just taking a look about it, right? So we finished the voting today on the ETP, and the voting passed with a result of 80% yes. And why this is really important for WSBDapp project, that was our first on-chain vote, completely transparent for everyone, and everyone had the right to vote if they, of course, are holders of WSBDapp tokens. So basically, we did our first step. It might be looking small, right? But it's like a first step to achieving the full decentralization.
Meow meow, I think we might have lost you for a moment there. To pick up where he fell off, yeah, we've achieved the first step towards creating the ETP, which is I think the news that he would like to share with everyone. I think there was a great deal of appreciation for how engaged everyone was in the government's process. I'm gonna click on Chocolate Superman, who would like to speak.
My internet is a little bit not cooperative today with me. Can you hear me?
Chocolate Superman, you're welcome to join.
Chocolate.
Yeah, I just joined, so I was wondering what's going on.
Oh,
Can you
hello.
Yeah, hello.
We've been talking about the news out of El Salvador in terms of being the first nation to make Bitcoin its legal tender and nationalize the currency. And we are now talking about the ETPs being the ETP voting concluding for the first round. Over 80% voted yes for the selection. And mostly what we're looking to get today is some engagement with the community and some feedback from the community on their thoughts on the subjects we're talking about today, but also areas of interest, areas of confusion, areas of excitement. Just we'd love to get more information from you guys about where your heads are at and how you're looking at these things, whether it's current event or WSB specific. But yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for answering.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry
Of course.
for my internet. A little bit wonky today.
Odyssey, did you have? I feel like you had more to share.
So I stepped away when you were talking about the ETPs and stuff. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I don't know everything, but.
So the ETP is the next product that Wall Street Bets is putting out, the next financial product, which is essentially a portfolio of crypto, different tokens that will exist as a crypto portfolio and be actively traded. And the choice of what to include in that was influenced by, and voted on by the community itself. Through the
themselves is like the stock market.
Yeah. So an ETP is something that's generally in crypto, it's a little bit different. There is a company called Balancer Finance, which you can look up, but they basically facilitate the back end of these ETP products. So if you were in, for instance, the traditional stock market, you would find something called an ETF, which is an actively traded fund, which gives you exposure to a certain subject.
That what an ETP is? I know what ETFs are.
Yeah, so it's basically the same thing, but in crypto. ETPs can be traded on foreign exchanges. They cannot be traded yet in the US. But because of two faculties. One is because of companies like Balancer Finance, you can create these in the crypto space. So you can invest in a crypto ETP and get exposure to a range of crypto products without having to go off and invest in 20 different things. And again, those are actively traded, meaning they move with the market.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
So I just wanted to add that there is also a slight difference in between an ETF and an ETP, in that an ETP is, since it's a balancer pool, it's providing liquidity and collecting trading fees.
Yes.
So with, just like when you're providing liquidity on PancakeSwap, there is also the possibility of small amounts of impermanent loss. But you'll be collecting trading fees, like an actual yield. An ETF doesn't give you yield. You don't collect trading fees. Like those trading fees go to, well, anyway, I already had what I wanted to say. Sorry.
No, that was helpful. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's a good point also.
So yes.
And also I want to add a
in
little bit.
simple terms, that just like, again, I agree with that. That sounds to me like the stock exchange is at their first stages of accepting it, which is, if they do that and it does well, then it's over after that.
Odyssey.
Yeah.
And more.
Well,
and
and are
more.
you familiar also, Odyssey, with synthetics and how they work?
I mean, like, I don't know much about it, but yeah, I'm familiar with it a little time.
So there's a couple different products.
Naked shorting.
Chocolate Superman, would you like to have the floor?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. You said something about was it naked shorting? Something like, I'm correct?
Shorting?
No, you said something about synthetics.
Oh yeah,
Chocolate.
about synthetics in crypto.
Chocolate.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. No, right now.
So there are several different platforms for this. Mirror Protocol is one, Synthetics is another, where you can essentially, and a lot of these already exist, you can create a synthetic version of a product that's on the stock market. And not just, like, for example, LVMH, the company, is traded on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It's not even available in America. I can purchase that as a synthetic stock in the crypto space, and it moves with the actual stock. There's an M Tesla that's already listed. So what this gives you the ability to do, and these are all pretty nascent products for the most part, but there's a lot of energy moving into this space to say, if you've already left the stock market and you're trading on the crypto market, you can build a stock portfolio out of synthetic assets that will move with the stock market, except for you have access to it 24/7, whereas the stock market, as we know, is 9:30 to 4, 5 days a week. And so the perception is that not only is it going to give you access to the global stock market as opposed to just whatever your national stock exchange is, but that it's going to give you an edge because you're able to trade 24/7 versus 9 to 4. And so the first ETP that Wall Street Bets is doing is a crypto ETP. The second will be a synthetic stocks ETP.
So that's just more
okay.
real world utility being applied to the crypto space as a whole instead of just one coin. That's
exactly.
good. We need this stuff to happen. I think it's happening fairly fast too. Again, like I said, we're witnessing an entire system being like changed or updated or evolving or whatever you want to call it. So can't nobody say that they know what's going to happen. But I think that as a whole, it's kind of positive. I think a couple of years ago, it wasn't looking too good. But I think at this point, the will this work question shouldn't even be in people's heads. It's working as we speak.
Question about the future of ETPs?
So
It's a future of bolstered bets.
Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, I have a question about the future of ETPs, because you were talking about the other networks like Mirror and Synthetics. And honestly, in my mind, in a perfect world, you could create an ETP that wasn't reliant on Balancer at all and could own assets from any chain. So you could have, Mirror Tesla or, synthetic inverted BTC or whatever, or ideally you could have LP tokens that are staked, right? If an ETP was just essentially a share of a wallet, that would be perfect, because then you could have a basket of staked LPs earning yields. I mean, like, it'd be cool to have, it might be okay to have a basket where you have these different mirror assets. But imagine a basket of, like on the Mirror protocol, you can earn, 60, 70, 80% APRs staking LPs where it's one half of the pair is a stock mirror and the other half is a stable coin. Like those kind of APRs with underlying assets with such low volatility is insane. If you could have a basket where it was, an ETP where it was a basket of staked LPs and the community was finding opportunities for great yields, I feel like that would be so great considering where the DeFi space is right now.
Well,
really
and you
want
sound like you really understand DeFi in a way that is quite advanced. I think that's probably one of the more brilliant suggestions I've heard in a while in terms of how to double
Eric,
down on the returns of something.
Eric,
Yeah,
I
you
sent you
here,
DMs.
Eric.
I sent you one sec, guys, please.
Talking
Eric,
some
I
good
sent
stuff
you.
there, buddy.
Yeah,
I
that's really astute. I mean, tell us a little bit more about your experience in DeFi and why you have such a sophisticated grasp of all of these products, which I would say exceeds the average investor.
Yeah, do you
Well,
like
mostly 14 hours is of research and big blocks of research, multiple days. I mean, really, just a lot of time researching it is.
sounds like you work in the DeFi space, bud.
Hey, can you hear me?
I should.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting though, because I find, for having done an incredible amount of research and asking very pestering questions to all the smart people I know, there are still concepts that are hard to get one's head around. There's still certain things that are just hard to process, no matter how many times it's explained in all these different ways. And I would say the same thing about the stock market as well.
I've balancer docs and like the pancake swap docs, like each over a dozen times for sure. And I've probably read the alpaca docs like 5 times, like just reading it over and over again until I actually understand what the hell it's saying. But yeah, it definitely, the learning curve is steep because so much of it, like you open up, the first time I went on pancake swap, I was like, what the. No, actually, it was.
What is this horrible website?
Yeah, and Sushi Swap is even more obtuse. And so that was my first look at it. I was like, what the hell is this? And it just took time, really. Time and effort, like all things.
Well, I really appreciate that you took that time and effort, because I think having people like you in a community like this is so valuable. I think the smarter we are as a community, the better we're going to do in this space. And so I'm really grateful and inspired by your intellect around it.
I appreciate that. I'm a guano will on the governance or the forum. I mean,
what's that?
I said I'm a guano will on the forum. I don't know if you.
Iguana will. All right, I'm writing that down. Chocolate Superman, what did you have to say?
Yeah, I had a question because obviously I'm not an expert on this topic, but the ETP, basically, if I understood correctly what you said, is going to be a tokenized version of the stocks on the blockchain. Am I right, or
the second ETP? Yes, the first one is a crypto ETP. There's going to be 2 separate ETPs. Yeah, so we've just finished voting on the crypto ETP.
They're going to be more.
Okay.
They're going to be more ETPs.
That makes me happy. I'm glad that they're.
So
Eric Mann, are you here with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I have to say, one of the things that I often share with project owners in this space is there's this tendency, I think, to withhold a lot of the details of what's to come until after a launch, and to kind of slowly roll those out. But had I known, before the launch of WSB, what the vision was and what these products were, I think I probably would have approached that initial investment much differently, and much more bullishly and much more patiently, because it really is very forward thinking what these guys are doing. And I'm going over my time in saying this, but I think it's something really important to share with this community, which is these last several weeks in DeFi have been pretty rocky, and pretty roller coaster like, just because of the swings that have been happening in the dips. And some of the, I have all these like super smart people groups that I go into and ask all these questions. And that's where I've actually weirdly seen the most paranoia and panic and FUD is, the people who've lived through 4 or 5 market cycles at this point, who are kind of the OG Bitcoiners. And, some of them are just like literally panicking and exiting into stables. And so there's been a lot of talk about, this inevitable bear market that might hit at some point. And there is a reality that, markets go in cycles, and at some point, and I can't tell you when, some point in the future, this market will hit a bear cycle. And what was so brilliant to me about WSB was realizing that, in a bear cycle, what better place to sort of find your port in the storm than a place that you can, farm, still maintain market exposure through ETPs, where you don't have to manage each individual stock personally. And, I think this platform becomes a really interesting port in the storm during a bear market where you can actually still earn and have a certain amount of stability and know that there's growth happening outside of the market itself in terms of, this documentary that's being made and the work that's being done by the leadership team to build something that's very, very, very long term that's still going to be here in 5 years. So I think those are all things that we should feel excited about, knowing that we know where we're going to be hanging out in a bear market, and it's not going to be, on your typical BSC kind of shitcoin.
You gotta also think too that a lot of that paranoia is like big whales manipulating the market for gains.
100%. 100%. And I think what's interesting about the people that have been in this game for a long time is that they didn't have that before. Those institutions weren't here in the last cycle.
That's
and
one of the I noticed is like that the fakeness in the game is way bigger now. All that manipulation is way bigger now because there's more players.
Yeah, 100%. And so if you're trying to go off your knowledge from the last 3 cycles and all of the learnings that you gained from that, and you're in this cycle, you're not necessarily seeing it as clearly, I think, in terms of understanding this third dimension, which is the institutional factor that wasn't always there.
And now it has a mainstream stage. So there's a lot of majority society who get the wrong first impression, and that goes to pullback,
Yeah. And it's also where I see, interestingly, it seems like every week there's some new, middle-aged billionaire announced he's entering Bitcoin. And the OGs get really excited because they feel this is validation. We fought for this for 7, 8, 9 years. Carl Icahn is finally acknowledging us. Like, Carl Icahn is the worst thing that could happen to this space. The guy's a corporate raider by trade. He's merciless. He's a billionaire already. His life's not going to benefit from Bitcoin in the way that so many other people's can. He just sees a fun new game to play, and understands that he's coming in with a much more sophisticated knowledge of trading than most people. So I think we have to be careful about what we celebrate. When we see high profile names coming into this space, we have to ask ourselves, well, who are they and how do they operate? Because they have, they all have a Wikipedia page you can look at and understand, what their MO is and how they might apply it to this space. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of heavy manipulators in the game now, and it's almost easier to follow their lead than to fight against them in some regards, to kind of, use them as tools to understand where the market is going, why it's going,
I think
where it's going.
Of the issues right now, because it's more than easy for them to influence you. If you go on YouTube and type anything cryptocurrency, 98% of the videos that pop up is this mass paranoia hype videos from these whales. And and social media, most of these kids, that's where they're going, YouTube.
Yep, exactly. I know it's tricky. It's a tricky landscape. I think it used to be more of a place that you could show up without a lot of experience and behave intuitively and find your footing. And I think there are a lot more forces at play now that are going to require the average investor to just be smarter and more informed and more alert in order to come out ahead in this.
How do you feel about schooling as far as this stuff goes now? That's
as far as education?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I feel like they haven't pressed play on that yet, really.
But I think it's so important. It's so important. I think fundamentally, the more educated and informed we are as a society, the better off society is. Period. No matter what the subject. But I think especially when it comes to financial tools,
the blockchain. That's like blockchain technology is really the most like. They should do some type of schooling for blockchain stuff now at this point.
Well, I'll tell you what. You can go on the MIT website, and Gary Gensler's course, they have it in an open source format where you can take the entire course, have access to all of the video episodes, all of the course materials, all the readings, and it's strictly about blockchain. It's not about crypto as a market, but about blockchain as a technology, and it's free.
No, I meant like the school structure though. I meant like.
You mean like elementary school, high school, that sort of thing?
I mean, That too. But I mean, I'm talking like just college. Like, all right, listen, when you go to school, there's not really anything for you to study as far as stuff like this goes yet. So I think
Right.
that's the
Well,
main thing to see is like,
You can study finance.
yeah, you
that's-
do. There are some wonderful blockchain courses at, Stanford, MIT, because those are, they have strong technology programs, and Harvard as well has one, but it's probably actually less good than MIT. But then on a sort of more elemental level, Binance is doing a lot of education in the developing world because, again, they understand that the more people understand that the more adoption there will be. And there are some various online learning tools around it, but I agree with you that, certainly in the US in general, our financial education's always been shit,
yeah, you get what I'm saying? You got to go to school for finance just to even learn the basics of crypto.
Yeah, no, it's a real problem in America. And it's something I talk about a lot with my friends who are all quite successful and terrible investors, and
I ain't saying it has to be a mandatory course, but I mean, like,
available to you and easy to take on.
yeah,
Yeah, financial literacy is, I think, super undervalued, and certainly in this country, I think probably in the world at large, but it's super undervalued, and it really does determine for most people your outcome in life, unless you were born wealthy.
where you get left.
Yeah, and I think especially in this space, because it is so nascent, it is a wild west, it is risky, but the profitability of it is actually potentially life-changing in a way that the stock market is not necessarily for someone who's starting at first base, trying to get home.
Like, I understand risky, but just my personal opinion, I don't really feel that the crypto space is any more risky than what we already have available to us now.
Well, I think the key to that is that we don't have that much available to us outside of this, I think, for the average person.
Yeah, true.
I think we have a stock market, but not everyone's in it. Few know how to play it. You have to have a lot of money in it to make a lot of money. It's, I think, my best performing stock that I've had for 4 years is up to maybe 299%.
When you put it, I agree though. You're right, because you don't need a lot of money to get in crypto.
Yeah, and I think you'll wait 3 years for a 3x in a stock market, which is not bad. I think historically speaking, the barometer would say, well, that's much better than obviously leaving it sitting in a bank. But I think there's a lot more potential to grow wealth in crypto. But I think people sometimes think it's easy money, and the reality is it's not easy money. You will get wrecked so many times. Like, if you haven't been rugged, you haven't done crypto. It's, I think there's a real rite of passage that comes with it. I think, as Eric was saying, the learning curve is very steep. And there are all these financial products in DeFi that people don't even realize are there. Yield farming is revolutionary, and most people don't do it and don't know about it and don't know how to do it. It's not hard.
So
But
I'm with DeFi because I just started rocking with, like, I got started like actually going in and seeing what it's about of like the beginning of the year. But I mean, like, I know about it. I just started tapping into it though. I've never really like the DeFi space, altcoins, all that. I never really was really big on any of that.
Yeah, it's it goes beyond just the tokens itself into the actual financial products and tools in DeFi, where they're almost in some ways mirroring the banking system while kind of mocking it at the same time.
That's my attention when I learned about yielding. That's when I was like, all right, and that's why I've been looking into it now.
Yeah, and when you try to go back and tell your friends who are not in crypto that you found a 250% APR on something, they won't believe you. And then they'll start asking, well, is it a scam? Right. It's like, no, it's actually a real financial product that exists in crypto. But it's so radical that, and it is so revolutionary in that regard, that I think most people think it's mythical or impossible. Whereas friends of mine, who have been yield farming for years, can just break down for you the kind of returns that they've seen without any incident, and it's profound, So yeah, I think again, it's sort of there's investing in the technology and the fundamentals of something, which are a lot of people in crypto, and then there's actually treating it more like a market where you can maybe be less emotionally attached to the thing that you're investing in, but you can understand the potential gains of it. and the risk that comes with that as well. And then there's actually getting into these products that allow you to earn and to build wealth based on your investment. And that's where you get into the real DeFi. And that's 7 leagues beyond what most people at this stage have even explored. And it's pretty amazing. And I think, if you can find a place to do that where you can also feel a sense of community and a sense of home and a sense of, I understand this, and this is delivering more than just returns, but I'm getting an education here, and I'm getting my questions answered. I think that that's a really unique thing, and I like that Wall Street Bets is offering that to people, especially as a lot of people that are coming in through Wall Street Bets are coming in through the name recognition and might be very, very new to the space. So I think it's a wonderful first port of call for anyone looking deeper into DeFi.
Yeah, for sure. WSB definitely become a household name. I could say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Has heard of it. They might not know what it is, but people heard of it.
Yeah. I've got one more note that I want to leave you guys on, because I do have to end this wonderful podcast. It's been really great talking to you guys and getting to hear your thoughts and opinions as a community. And I hope we get to do a lot more of this. But I did want to mention that there was an auction in Miami last week for anyone that didn't get the update on this. There was a meme contest. The meme contest had its winners. Those have been announced on a Medium post. And those winners all received an NFT of their meme. And they were then auctioned off for charity, and the proceeds went to the San Diego Zoo. So we wanted to close that loop for you guys, for anyone that was left wondering what the result of that auction was.
So I know all about NFTs. Like when that first came about, I was kind of like seeing it, hearing about it, all that, but I just never, by choice, I just like sat on the sidelines. That's still a thing right now, though. It's gotten big.
Yeah. So, I mean, NFTs are still happening. I don't know that there have been any remarkable sales in the way that there had been.
People.
Yeah, like the big Beeple sales. There hasn't been any insane headline news of that multi-million-dollar ilk, but there's still some pretty interesting stuff happening in the space. What I'm seeing as a trend is NFT platforms launching, where similar to an ETP, you can invest in a token and gain exposure to NFTs as opposed to having to purchase the NFT for anyone that wants exposure to that marketplace, but isn't in fact interested in collecting or maybe able to collect. And Wall Street Bets has a partner called Meme Farm, who, which is a governance platform, meaning its users vote on which memes to put forth and to mint as NFTs. But they have a token, so you can essentially buy the token and have exposure to the platform as opposed to buying the NFT itself. And I've seen 3 or 4 similar platforms launch in just the last few weeks, where they're realizing not everyone wants to be a collector, but people still want exposure to the space.
So did you hear about like you might have heard of, you might not have, but there was a like semi-famous or like successful real estate agent or agency in the US that just recently they put a house for sale as an NFT.
It's funny. I think I did see that, and I don't think I read it in full, and I don't think I understood what it was. I saw it.
I did. I saw it and kept it moving, but
yeah, I think I saw the headline and kind of was puzzled and just kept on going.
How would that work? How would you sell a physical property as an NFT?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to speak beyond my expertise, so I won't go too far down that line. But my understanding is that it would probably serve more as like a property title in a sense.
Yeah, there basically just need to be some legal infrastructure connecting the NFT to the actual deed. So basically, a contracts lawyer would need to be involved.
Oh, okay.
Eric, can you be on all my calls? Just forever.
Yeah.
Oh, I love how succinctly you articulate it. But yeah, I mean, this is a big thing that's happening in a lot of the developing world, are blockchain companies going in and really trying to figure out how to create stronger property titles, especially in countries like Colombia, where the government is notorious for just showing up at your house and saying, "Oh, this is actually our property. This is our land." And you have this a lot in Mexico, in Colombia, and in a lot of Central America where there's government corruption. You have people who lose titles to their land and on the regular.
NFTs will help them, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and I think it can also be done by smart contract. It doesn't have to necessarily maybe be as complex as an NFT, but I think that it would serve the same purpose to establish a deed and a title, and probably all sorts of information embedded in that would be passed down from owner to owner over time.
Eric, how do you feel about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, one of my big, we were talking about crypto losses. One of mine from 2018 was this token called LA token. The LA stood for liquid asset, and the thing that attracted me to it was the idea that you could own like fractions of rental property. To me, that was one of the most exciting ideas. Was that you didn't have to make a $300,000 investment and purchase a house, or a $3 million investment to get an apartment thing or a complex. I mean, that's small town prices, by the way. Somebody could just easily get access to that. I wanted to say about the basket of NFTs, the thing you were saying that was like gosh, sorry, I'm forgetting like everything. Like an ETP, but for the NFTs, right? Too many letters. Can you imagine like trying to explain to your grandparents that you own a basket of fractions of CryptoKitties or something like that?
They would think you're on drugs.
Yeah, to be honest.
What I was to ask was, it sounds like we're fully dependent on the protocols such as Balancer, Mirror, Synthetics. So are we dependent on the life cycle of those companies?
Of what?
Eli, I'm sorry, it was a bit hard to hear you there.
Oh, sorry. It sounds like we are dependent on the life cycle and the development of the companies. Synthetics, Mirror, Balancer. Is that true?
Are we dependent on them? Is that the question?
Yeah, are we dependent on them?
I don't think I would look at it as a dependency. I would say, in forming an ETP that is meant to be stock based, then you're going to be including, essentially mirrored assets into that. But there are different companies that create those. It's not all one chain or one particular company that does those tokenized stocks. So I think it would be more about the community choosing which they're interested in, and Balancer figuring out how to make all of that work on the back end.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I know Binance is doing something similar. They tokenized synthetic Tesla and whatnot. But I think
if
Balancer is looking into those other protocols?
I think they are. I know our ETP is going to be on the Ethereum chain, but I do think that yes. I mean, I think the way that the general direction that DeFi is going in is cross chain, and I think all of the sort of next phases of any company that deals with this niche is going to be, just to be competitive, are going to have cross-chain capabilities. I don't think that you're going to be able to operate only on Ethereum, especially now that they've pushed their update. I think BSC obviously has advantages and also limitations. I think a lot of people are trying to build on Polygon, and a lot of people are trying to build on Solana. And there's also, a very anticipated launch this year with something called Thorchain, which is a cross-chain liquidity. It's a cross-chain DEX, and it's something somewhat pioneering, I would say, in that regard, but not necessarily impossible to imitate. But yeah, I think people are starting to realize the limitations of being a single chain operator.
Same thing with the that's what the whole ETH 2.0 thing is about too. They're just
Exactly.
benefit and make it, you know what I'm saying, revise and revise again. That's all they're doing. I think.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, if you're coming in to build a decentralized app, you don't want to be at the mercy of a blockchain developer's schedule and whatever their personal infighting is, which was kind of if there's anything funny about Ethereum 2.0 being pushed, it's them saying, it's actually not about the technology. It's we're not getting along right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you're trying to build a decentralized app, you can't wait for them to sort out their differences. You need to be able to move on it quickly. Because the space is, it's an incredibly fast space, and there are new entrants all the time. So I think we're going to see a lot of rapid evolution and a lot of agile development. Guys, I have to sign off. I'm 23 minutes past my bedtime over here in terms of this podcast. But I again want to thank you guys as a community, and please, reach out anytime. And we'll do this every Wednesday. So I look forward to having you back. And also, if you have ideas about, subjects that are interesting to you, things you'd love to hear us talk about, guests you'd love to have on the show, please DM me. Please share that information. Because what we want to do is actually build a program that has real value to the community. That's the idea behind this. And to give you guys a forum to not just share your thoughts and ideas and questions, but to also make sure that we have, again, a bridge to leadership so that they are understanding where the community's at, what they're looking for, where they need to, enhance focus. And likewise, that we can share, thoughts from leadership to the community.
Every Wednesday at what time?
1 p.m. PST, which I can never remember what time that is. UTC, maybe?
It's all right. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, they'll post it on Twitter. They post it on Twitter every week. But we'll give a little more advance notice going forward as well.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Odyssey. And thank you, Eric. And thank you, Chocolate Superman.
You, Venus.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I want everyone to feel, oh, wait, we have a really big announcement. Hold on. It's Meow Meow's birthday today.
Oh, meow,
so
meow.
I think we all need to say a big happy birthday to Meow Meow.
In meow, we got to say it in.
And I think everyone should send him some birthday messages and some birthday love. But yes, thank you to Meow Meow, and thank you to everyone here. And I do want everyone to feel, comfortable and confident coming back with questions and tapping that little button and requesting to speak and being in dialogue. And there's no such thing as a stupid question, and there's nothing you should be afraid to ask. There's nothing, as long as it's not deeply, deeply inappropriate and not safe for work, we're cool.
Just for the record, I said little curses. I didn't know you were podcasting. My bad.
Oh, it's okay. I too cursed. I don't think that we're being censored in that regard. But yeah, it's all good. It's all good. All right, guys. Take care, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
And happy birthday, Meow Meow.